David was one of the first original 2 marketing executives. In fact, one of my favorite stories you told me, and I think I got it right, is he joined Chick-fil-A. He was the 21st employee, and they had an early email system that rivals most in that it was a hole in the wall where he'd just pass something through the wall to Truett. So here you go. So it's like no bandwidth issues there, right? But he spent 37 years at Chick-fil-A and retired as vice president of marketing. It's where he's learned so much about servant leadership and remarkable customer experiences. During his time, he was instrumental in the cow campaign. I mean, how can you not like that cow campaign? And he was one of the guys that helped come up with that. Throughout his career, he's had a passion to spark the growth of individuals, teams, and organizations. He realized the business principles used to help Chick-fil-A grow are applicable to any company. And as a result, he formed a company called Spark a Revolution. He attended Wake Forest University, and I'll see if I can get this right, Universidad de Madrid, and graduated from University of Georgia. He also is an alumni of Harvard Business School. So with that, please help me welcome David Salyers. Oh, I guess I was supposed to do that. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, sir. Pleasure, Brian.
So what we're decided to do, and something we're going to try to do in future events, last time we met, we interviewed some therapists about family issues and business, how that relates into the business. So instead of asking the speakers to put together a talk, we thought, let's interview and have more of a dialogue. And during our break, during the next networking session, you'll be able to say what impacted us the most, what questions do I have for David, and we'll just go from there. So we're having fun experimenting with this, but hopefully it's in a way that you'll walk away saying, wow, I learned something. This was really cool. So David, let's just start with the top here. Tell us a little bit about your career with Chick-fil-A and the roles that you played.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with your theme of things I accidentally got right, because joining Chick-fil-A was one of those. I met Truett Cathy when I was a junior in college, and I ended up going to work for Chick-fil-A 4 hours after college graduation. I graduated on a Saturday morning. I went to work for Chick-fil-A Saturday afternoon. And then the rest, as they say, is history. But Chick-fil-A at the time, it wasn't a startup, but it was close. As Brian mentioned, we were in a converted air freight warehouse, not even the size of this room, smaller than this room. And they had run out of room in the warehouse, so they cut a hole through the wall, pulled up a mobile home. And my first office was in a mobile home attached to a warehouse. Now, here's what makes this really accidental that I joined Chick-fil-A. As a 21-year-old kid, if you had asked me what the most remarkable future I could imagine for myself would have been, I would have said, I want to graduate from school, make as much money as I can, as fast as I can, to retire as early as I can. And I'd set 35 as my goal. I want to be retired by age 35. So that's the mentality I had as a 21-year-old kid, how naive I was. And what I didn't realize, how disastrous that would have been had that occurred. But fortunately, I went to work for a guy named Truett Cathy, who became like a second father to me. We're talking about the most inspiring individual, human being I probably ever met. But he was a lot like a second father to me in so many ways. And that may be him.
There you go.
He may be joining us from heaven here. Anyway, instead of finding the job I could retire from early at Chick-fil-A, I found something that I would call 1,000 times better. Something as a 21-year-old kid, I couldn't have even imagined existed. In fact, something I wouldn't have believed had I not seen it play out before my very eyes and had I not experienced it. Instead of finding the job I could retire from early, I found the job I wouldn't want to retire from. See, that thought had never crossed that 21-year-old kid's mind, that there could be a job you wouldn't want to retire from. My assumption, based on the culture that we grow up in, is the point of work is to stop doing it. And really, if you set your goal as retire by 35, and you would have been more happy if you retired by 30, it's the same thing. If you think about that one level deeper, What does that mean? That means I don't like what I'm doing because I want to stop doing it as fast as I can. And tragically, most people who have that goal probably will never achieve it. And they may spend an entire life going after something that's never going to happen. Instead, by seeing Truett and just hearing the way he viewed life and the way he did life and the inspiring way that he thought about things, he told me, he said, if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. If you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. So I feel like I spent 37 years at Chick-fil-A, never worked a day in my life and got paid anyway. Pretty good gig when you can pull that off. But here's the other thing. If money is not your pursuit, money will be the fruit, not the object of what you're doing. Because as you know, Chick-fil-A's done pretty well. You know, in fact, I remember going up to Truett's office when he was in his 80s. Say, Truett, what are you still doing here, man? You're 401k, fully funded. Why are you still here? You know what he'd tell me? He'd say, David, why would I stop doing something I love this much? See, he had a whole different philosophy of business and the point of business and the point of life. And so that just got infused into me and really changed all the trajectory. In fact, it changed a lot of my decisions in life. But that single decision to go to work for that little, mobile home attached to the warehouse where it looked like I didn't have a prayer retiring at age 35 ended up being a pretty good accidental decision in the end.
I love it. And I recently came across a quote that says, craft a life that you don't want to escape from. And that sounds pretty much what you're talking about there. So that's neat. Well, Chick-fil-A is known for delivering a consistent, high-quality experience for their clients. How does Chick-fil-A handle the hiring, onboarding, and ongoing training of team members to make this happen? I was talking with a group the other day. You can, if you have a McDonald's manager, a Taco Bell manager, a Pizza Hut manager talking, well, we can't grow our value anymore. What else can we do? And then all of a sudden, here comes this Chick-fil-A thing that says, hey, let's compete on quality. Let's compete on customer service. But that doesn't just happen. How did it, for anyone here who's got employees, or even if you don't have employees, you have contractors, that you work with, vendors that you work with, I think it extends to that whole network. So can you enlighten us on some of the things in there? Well,
one of the most common questions I get in a forum like this is, where do you find those amazing young people and those amazing people that work at Chick-fil-A? And what I like to tell people is that's the wrong question. And if you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. The right question would be, in my opinion, humble chicken salesman's opinion, how do you become the business the people you're looking for are looking for? See, it's not about finding these magic people out there. It's about becoming the organization that those people are looking to join. And I think that's been the focus of Chick-fil-A. So let me go back to the very beginning. When Chick-fil-A first started, it was back in 1967 when Chick-fil-A, as you know, it started, and franchising was just coming about, was just kind of hitting its stride, and places like McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all those places were starting roughly in the 60s back then. And what all of them looked for, Chick-fil-A's history is kind of zigging when everyone else is zagging. So this was kind of the very first example of that. What all of our competitors were looking for was people with a lot of capital. Because if they thought of franchising as leveraging other people's money, and therefore they had to have a lot of money. By today's terms, if you want to open a Chick-fil-A, you're looking at $3 or $4 million. So to be a franchisee, you'd have to have access to $3 or $4 million. And so what they were looking for, people that have access to $3 or $4 million to open that franchise. And what that does is it shrinks the pool considerably. And it may even shrink the pool to people you may not be as interested in. What Truett said is, I don't want to leverage other people's money. I want to leverage other people's talent. Because relatively speaking, money is fairly easy to find. You can find it in a bank account, you can find it, but talent, that's the hard part. So while the first question our competitors would ask is, do they have access to $3 or $4 million in capital? It may surprise you to know what the first question Chick-fil-A would ask. Anybody want to take a guess at the first question Truett would ask when he was looking for his next franchisee, what you know of as an owner-operator at Chick-fil-A? And I have free Chick-fil-A sandwiches for those who participate. Yeah. Oh, now we get a lot of hands up. What's that?
What are you passionate about?
Very close. She said, what are you passionate about? I'm gonna go ahead and deliver this to you. Yes. I'm passionate about that answer. Very, very close. His first question when he was looking for his next owner-operator was, would I want my kids working for this person? As he was asking questions during the interview process, the question going through his mind is, based on the way they're answering my questions, would I want my kids working for that person? Think about 1,000 questions that one question answers. And here's the thing to think about too. we viewed people, you say businesses don't succeed or fail, people do. So if you want to have a successful business, you got to staff it with successful people, and you got to be the kind of business that can attract those successful people. So the reality is, in a fast food business, about 70% of our employees are teenagers. So the way Truett viewed this is, we're gonna be the first job a lot of these 16-year-olds are gonna have. This is a stewardship opportunity that we need to be serious about. And so he was looking for people that would be good stewards of the people that came to work for them. And the other thing is, all of us have kids. If we wouldn't want our kids working for that person, why would I want someone else's kids working for that person? On and on and on it goes. But I think I can kind of maybe collapse it down to this. One of the things that I used to love to do is ask our Chick-fil-A operators. And our Chick-fil-A operators are not only some of the greatest business people I've ever met, they are some of the greatest human beings I've ever met. And I had a chance to visit over the course of my career, probably 1,800 of them personally in the restaurants. And I used to always love to ask this question: what business are you in? What business are you in? The most obvious answer to that question would be, I'm in the fast food business. That would be zigging. Where's that? Or I sell chicken sandwiches for a living. Or, do you realize out of 1,800 opportunities, not one operator ever told me they were in the fast food business or the chicken business? In fact, fast food business generally is viewed as the job of last resort anyway, isn't it? If I can't do anything else, I can always flip burgers for a living. That's the way. But here's what's fascinating. I got amazing answers, but my favorite answer I ever got, and this I think will be very telling about creating the business the people you're looking for are looking for. The best answer I ever got, I'd say, came from an operator up in Virginia. He told me this. He said, David, I feel like I'm a leadership development academy masquerading as a fast food restaurant. I'm a leadership development academy masquerading as a fast food restaurant. Now, let that simmer for a minute. Think about that for a minute. If this guy has a leadership development academy, then the way he was viewing what he was doing was this. He said, I'm selling chicken sandwiches, fries, and drinks, but I'm doing that in order to fund my leadership development academy. And the product that I'm providing the community is not really chicken sandwiches, fries, and drinks. It's these amazing young people that I've got a stewardship opportunity for a chapter of their life that I'm going to help them form their picture of what work looks like. I'm going to help them with their values and their morals and their leadership opportunity and their skills. And, I'm going to help mold and shape this next generation of young people. And then I'm going to put that product out into the world. That's the way this operator viewed what they did. Now, let that play out another rung, kind of. If you went to another fast food competitor and they viewed that same 16-year-old as a minimum wage worker, that they were going to maximize their profitability in that restaurant, so they're just going to send that kid home whenever they have to, in order to maximize their profits, and they just viewed that as a cog in the works and a dispensable individual. Compare the experience you might have as a customer at that, as a fast food worker, versus the Leadership Development Academy, where this operator was, training these people and investing in these people and creating loyalty with these people, et cetera, and creating this amazing culture that all these young people want to be part of. Imagine the difference if you're a 16-year-old and you could choose which place you wanted to work. Imagine the difference if you were the parents of a 16-year-old, where would you want them to work? And imagine the difference as a customer going into the Leadership Development Academy versus the alternative. You see how it all goes back to the core idea of how we view what we do and what business are we really in? And do we have a calling beyond the obvious? And if we could take a fast food business and do that, what could you do with fast food again is one, what I love about the Chick-fil-A story, it's kind of, if you were to pick the worst, business to be in terms of if you want to be an inspiring business, but fast food would rank right there with trash collecting, kind of. And yet Truett was able to take the least of these kind of businesses and make something that's remarkable and incredible. And let me comment on the results, because all that may sound nice and, squishy and emotional. Let me comment on the results for you that are more, hard, fact-based people. Chick-fil-A competes in one of the most ferocious industries imaginable. In fact, let's just talk about turnover. The average turnover in a fast food restaurant is 500% a year. The average turnover at the management level, like the person leading it, is about 50% retention, 50%. So about every 6 months, the leadership is turning over. Do you know what Chick-fil-A, we didn't talk about turnover, we talked about retention rate, because Truett was always want to be very positive. You know what the retention rate is of the Chick-fil-A operator? The equivalent to that 50% turnover a year? 97% retention, 3% turnover. You know what the retention rate is at the Chick-fil-A support center, what used to be called the home office, now it's the support center? 97%. 97% in an industry known for turnover. Now, we also compete in one of the most ferocious industries imaginable. There are about 200 top competitors in fast food, 200 top chains. And if you added up all the advertising money for those top 200 chains, it'd be the biggest advertising budget in the world. It's ferocious in terms of the amount of advertising money. There's a war for talent. It's known for discounting. All these things, anything you could think of that would be tough to compete in, probably fast food has it in spades. So in that environment, the average fast food restaurant last year did about $700,000. So fast food on average, top 200 chains, is about a $700,000 business. McDonald's, arguably the best in the business, and McDonald's is not only golden arches, but they are the gold standard for the business. Last year, McDonald's did, last I heard, about 2.6 million, more than 3 times, working on 4 times the average. Pretty amazing. Now, of those top 200 restaurant chains, 199 of them look at the day Sunday, come to the conclusion, good day to be open. And I grew up in a family, my brother's an attorney, my dad was an attorney, so we used to love to argue things. I used to, dream of being an attorney. At one point, that's what I thought I wanted to do, and I became a chicken sandwich salesman instead. But I'd love to make the argument to be open on Sunday if I was an attorney. And the argument I would make is this. If you just look at the data, the numbers, because this is the argument this is where most business people go. Let's look at the numbers. The numbers would say Sunday is the single best day to be open. Single best day to be open by a large margin. Think about your own behavior. I'll bet most of you in this room probably go out to eat more often on Sunday than any other day, although maybe not during COVID as much, but certainly back in the normal days, people are out and about, they're going out to eat. It would roughly, for most restaurants, be about 20% of their sales. So $700,000 business, McDonald's gold standard, 2.6 million in the same business. Chick-fil-A, with an arm tied behind it, 52 less days open than all of our competitors. 52 less of the best days. I was just on the phone last week with Dan Cathy, and he was telling me about the trajectory of the business. Anyone want to take a guess at what, in the middle of COVID, what Chick-fil-A restaurants are trending to do this year on average, the average freestanding Chick-fil-A in a $700,000 business, McDonald's, 2.6 million, all those restaurants open 52 more days, 52 more of the best days. Anybody want to take a guess? I've got a free Chick-fil-A right over here.
4 million.
4 million. No, but thanks for playing. Back here. 1.8 million. No, but thanks for playing. One more, and then I'll tell you. Yes. 5 million. 5 million. No. How about $7 million?
How about $7 million?
Yes. 10 times the industry norm. 10 times in 52 less days. So if you want to argue emotion, we got emotion. If you want to argue the hard data and the facts, we got those too. I like the other part. I like the Leadership Development Academy. But anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
I was just going to say, wow. I should have been taking notes.
Yeah.
But, one thing, having worked with you as you took over Rome and as I'm still involved a little bit in that business, when you go to school, you learn about vision, mission, goals, all that fun stuff. And I work with my clients on setting their strategies. But one area that gets kind of squishy is values.
Yes.
And I always like to start with values, and you can see people cringe sometimes, or really jump into it, or really have to think it through. What does that mean? And through all my years at corporate, we'd have to spend the time writing a business plan and all that good stuff. And then they say, well, show us your business plan. Well, I can't find it. I don't know where I filed that thing, because we got it written, you nodded positively to me, and then you asked me to go do all the stuff I was going to do anyway, right? It didn't seem to have teeth. But in the entrepreneurial space, I've had a different observation. And one thing I've noticed about you and Peyton is, in this new venture too, you don't take your values and stuff them in a drawer somewhere. I take a look at it and see how it's woven very thoughtfully throughout the business and the impact it has. So it makes me wonder, can you tell us about times Chick-fil-A had to make a tough decision in order to stay true to their values, and how did that turn out?
Yeah, there's so many times, but let me go back to one of the most important times connected to what you're talking about. It was in the early 80s. I was really early in my career. And unfortunately, the marketing department went almost $1 million over budget. It was a promotion that went a little too well. The giveaways were a little too much. And at that time, we were still in the air freight warehouse kind of thing. So this was significant. Truett went for an entire year and didn't take a salary. That's how dire the straits were. So the senior leadership team went on a little retreat up at Lake Lanier Islands. And they were going to go back and work on the plan to get us out of this. And so Dan Cathy started a 2-day retreat with this question: why are we here? Why are we here? And it's interesting, we're talking about Simon Sinek in my little group here. Chick-fil-A was talking about why, start with why before anyone else. That was the question. And they spent 2 days on the question, why are we here? And came out, the thing that came out of that meeting, they didn't come back with a great plan of the how and the what and the when and all. They came back with the why. And the why was this: the corporate purpose for Chick-fil-A was born during a dire time when the business was in trouble. And they decided to start with why. And the why was this: to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to Chick-fil-A, and a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. That's the why behind Chick-fil-A. Notice, has nothing to do with chicken sandwiches, fries, and drinks. The purpose of that business is to glorify God, be a faithful steward of the resources that are entrusted to us, and a positive influence. That's what Truett, that is the why behind Chick-fil-A. It centers on the values of Chick-fil-A, and we don't stray from those. And interestingly, they didn't come back with the how and the what, but all that emanated from the why. And the next year, 46% same store sales increase for Chick-fil-A. So the how and the what, interesting, a college intern shared this with me one time. He said, when you lose your why, you lose your way. And so many times when people are losing their way, they look for the how and the what and all that, but they need to go back to the why. And so many of the things that have happened at Chick-fil-A were born in dire times like this. So I'll give you another example. The last time the world felt like this to me, or at least the United States, was in 2007 and 8, when we had the banking crisis. Everybody remember that? The normal reaction to a time like that is to go on the defense. We got to cut back. We got to trim expenses. We got to send people home. We got to furlough people. We got to, anything we can do to cut back, save the business, that's what we got to do. Interestingly, Truett had a very different idea about how to navigate that, as did Dan. Back in 2007, 2008, we were all around the planning table saying, how are we going to navigate? Just think COVID. Think about right now in the year that you've all been through. That was emotionally what it felt like. And now Truett and Dan are talking about spending millions of dollars on this big new idea they have called second mile service. Second mile service. And again, I'd love to be the attorney to argue against second mile service. And 98% of the people at Chick-fil-A thought this was a terrible idea, that we're going to spend millions of dollars on creating a customer service program, on flying operators and team members to Atlanta to train them on it. All ththese different things, spend millions of dollars in a time just like this when we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it in a normal year. Now we're going to do it in an abnormal year. So, anyway, the argument against it, if I was the attorney, would have been this. And this was the argument that many of the leaders at Chick-fil-A were making. They said, are you crazy? If people wanted service, what kind of restaurant would they go to? A white tablecloth, right? Where or a where you have a waiter or waitress and you, that same $3 chicken breast at Chick-fil-A is $20 at this restaurant. So you pay for that service and you pay for that ambiance and you tip for that service and you tip for that ambiance. Where's the last place in the restaurant business you would look for service? Fast food, by definition. Fast food.
Give her a card.
Okay. Good idea. That's why I need him helping me. So the last place you'd look for service would be a fast food place. I mean, that's the logical argument, right? And here's the other thing. There was a presidential candidate. I'm not going to get political here. There was just a presidential candidate a number of years ago that had this expression. They said, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid. Well, our equivalent to that at Chick-fil-A was, it's the food, stupid. It's the food. People are coming, they're paying their hard-earned money for the food. So let's focus on the food. This service thing, dumb idea. Well, fortunately for the rest of us, we accidentally got it right. The rest of us, they got it right intentionally. Truett and Dan prevailed in that one. Now, here's the cool thing about the Chick-fil-A culture. As many people were against it, the minute the decision was made, everyone rallied behind it. One of our presidents used to have this expression. They said, either make good decisions or make your decisions good. And so the whole team rallied behind making this a good decision for Chick-fil-A. So out of that was born what's now known as second mile service. So fast forward 10 years later. Second mile service, you could think of first mile as operational excellence is what we call it, doing what people expect with excellence. Second mile service was doing what they don't expect with excellence, doing things they're not asking for, doing things that will surprise them, doing things that will make us remarkable to them. So second mile service was born during this time. We did spend the millions of dollars. We did fly people in. We did train operators. Today, Chick-fil-A is more known for service than the food. All of our customer data would say people come more to Chick-fil-A for the service than the food. Here's the other thing. A subset of second mile service was to reinvent the drive-through experience. We said the drive-through experience hadn't been reinvented in 50 years. It looks exactly the same as it did 50 years ago. You drive up to a speaker box and you talk into the box and we can't hear you and you can't hear us and it's this nasty experience. And we wanted to make it an inspiring experience. Now, during COVID, almost all of our restaurants, some of them had to shut down totally in the malls. All of our freestanders shut down the dining room, and what did you have to do? Go through the drive-thru. Does it look like NASCAR out there? It's like, multiple lanes and people with iPads and all this stuff. Well, all of that was born during the financial crisis. None of that we got a 10-year head start on all of our competitors, reinventing the drive-thru. And now that's an amazing experience. And what's amazing, again, I talked to Dan last week, in the midst of COVID, we're going to have the best year by far Chick-fil-A has ever had. And even though we still got mall locations closed, we had the dining rooms closed and all the things working against us, last month, he told me same store sales were up 13%. Now, you may not be familiar with fast food, but fast food in a good year, you're up 1 or 2%. Would be a good year for most people. We're up 13% in the middle of a pandemic when the inside dining is closed. On and on and on it goes. So anyway, that's another long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's really interesting that what you're experiencing during this crisis was born out of the last crisis. Had we not had the last crisis, we wouldn't be doing so well in this one. And I can't tell you some of the things we're working on during this one. They're going to benefit Chick-fil-A. Unbelievable some of the things that are being worked on right now at Chick-fil-A because we got the resource, we got the momentum, and we're doing $7 million in a $700,000 category that allows you to do a few things. But at some point we want to go back to, it wasn't always that way. When I was in the mobile home attached to it, we had the least resources and the lowest sales. So I've lived through both ends of it. And there are good things and bad things about both ends of that spectrum.
So I don't want to reveal corporate secrets on behalf of Chick-fil-A, but I think the next evolution is they'll just know when you're hungry. All of a sudden, poof, there's a chicken sandwich. So there's an app for that. So I'm going to take a little liberty with the timing of the agenda and reduce our networking time because there's another question I think is really pertinent to all of you. Again, we're talking to a bunch of business owners. Mm-hmm. I think one of the challenges all of us face is marketing.
Yes.
And while you certainly don't, I'm sure you don't have a magic bullet for what each company owner should do, but I imagine there's a thought process you go through.
Yep.
If you say, okay, I got a challenge, I got to do some marketing. What is the thought process you go through that these business owners would benefit from?
Oh, I wish I had 2 hours to answer that question. That's a really good question. Let me give you a simple answer, and then I'm going to tell them about some other things. But I think where most marketers get it wrong is they think of marketing as an opportunity to extract value from people instead of an opportunity to create value for people. We were always focused on creating value. If you think about it, if I had a whiteboard, I'd write a little equation. I'd say value equals what you get divided by what you pay. What you get divided by what you pay. Value equals that. So the problem for all of us as business owners, and I own several businesses now, the problem is the customer wants a value imbalance in their favor. Every customer, I want a value imbalance in my favor. When I go to an auto repair store, I want a value imbalance in my favor. When I go to Chick-fil-A, I want a value. Everybody wants a value imbalance in their favor. The problem is what most people work on, what most business people do to create the value imbalance is they focus on what you pay and they totally miss what you get to create the value imbalance. And the reason they focus on what you pay is pretty obvious, especially in a big business. First of all, if you focus on what you pay, if we were to drop the Chick-fil-A sandwich price from $3 down to 99-cent sandwich or buy one, get one free or all the things that our competitors are doing, if you want to learn about focusing on what you pay, just study the fast food business. They all focus on the what you pay side. But the problem, that creates a number of problems. One is you can't profitably operate if you're charging a fair price every day on that. So the minute you start discounting all the time, it makes people question your regular price as not being fair. Secondly, you've got to be profitable to stay in business. And so when you keep discounting your product, you probably can't stay in business. The other thing is if you discount it by $1 this year, and then they still want that value imbalance, you got to do it by $2 and $3, and you eventually run out of room to discount. On and on and on it goes. I could spend lots of time, but here's the reason people do it is one, it works and it works immediately. I guarantee you, if Chick-fil-A did a $1 sandwich today, people would, it works. The other thing is you can count, weigh, and measure the fact it worked and prove to the CFO that it worked. So if you're in marketing, they always want the data and the analytics. They want to show that what you did worked and it worked to me and it works in the short run. I can show where it worked this week or this month or whatever. So it works, it's easy, and it's quick. Now, what few people do is they focus on the what you get side. So you can also create a value imbalance with what you get. But the exact opposite reasons, it's not quick. It's not as easy to measure, and it doesn't necessarily happen in the short run. People often ask me, how'd you get that 13% sales increase last month? And I say, well, we didn't do it last month. That 13% sales increase is 30 years in the making. It's what we did the last 30 years that produced that increase, not what we did last week or last month. So values are about sacrifice many times. And what Chick-fil-A has done has been willing to sacrifice in the short run in order for things to pay off in the long run. So what does that what you get side look like? Well, the easiest, there's so many things I could tell you about this, but we've got an 80,000 square foot innovation center down at Chick-fil-A Support Center. I'd love to walk you. You can't even comprehend how big 80,000 square feet is. I love to walk people through our innovation center. First of all, we've had college students that come say, they think of Chick-fil-A as this little fried chicken sandwich Southern chain, and they walk in, they say, this looks more like Apple or Google. How innovative and creative and even high tech now, that all the drive-through stuff and all that was born in the innovation center over there. But what I love to do is walk people through the innovation center and point out this one thing. I could walk you through 80,000 square feet of innovation, and there's not one thing in the innovation center designed to get you to spend one more penny at Chick-fil-A. It's all designed to create more value for the hard-earned money you're already spending and create that value imbalance in your favor that every customer wants. We just don't do it by lowering the price. We do it by adding to what you get. And if I have more time, I'll give you a lot better answer, but that's the essence of it.
That was outstanding. I'm sitting there trying to catch my breath. So what we're going to do now is switch to a Zoom networking session. It'll be 5 minutes long. And again, someone pick a leader. And the question is, what was the most impactful piece of information you got from the talk so far? And if you have any questions. And when we come back, I don't know if the sound is working with Zoom yet, but when you come back, if you have a question, type it into the chat room. Michael Moore will read it out to us. If you're here and you have a question or something you want to share, come up to the microphone so we can be on camera and the Zoom people can hear you. So with that, let's kick off the breakout session, Rich. All right, welcome back. Rich, oh, here it is. You have a question. Well, come on up to the microphone and ask it. All right, we have a question as we are starting back. And I know David want to cover something too, but go ahead, Sue. Could you face that camera? Right. Oh, you got to push the button on top. Sorry.
Okay, my question would be that obviously you've made a chicken sandwich very famous. You've made a cow very famous, but there's one other thing that you've made extremely famous. It's 2 words, and I'd like to know where my pleasure came from, and was it planned, and how has it continued to be executed?
It would be my pleasure to answer that question. And I do happen to know the story behind that. It's actually an interesting story. We talked in our little small group. One of the things that used to inspire me is we had a practice we called corporate tourism, where what we would do is we felt like if we wanted to become excellent, we needed to study excellence wherever it was found. And very rarely would it be found in the fast food business. So we didn't necessarily study our competitors as much, but we'd go study excellence wherever we felt like existed. One of the places we went was to Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And Ritz-Carlton Hotel had this practice of saying, my pleasure. Truett picked up on that and he loved it. And so he had a good relationship with Horst Schulze, who was the guy who started Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And Horst kind of shared with him. And so Truett said, well, I think we ought to say my pleasure. And Horst thought, no, that's a bad idea. You know, that fits our hotel. But Truett thought it was a good idea. So we basically borrowed that from Ritz-Carlton. And now we're more known for it than Ritz-Carlton. But the owner of Ritz-Carlton thought it was a bad idea for a fast food company to use that language. But Truett thought it was a good idea to elevate the language that we use. So that's where my pleasure came from. But here's the thing most people get wrong about that. And this is typical in business. A lot of our competitors think, okay, well, we see Chick-fil-A doing it, so we'll just do it. Right. But what Truett understood is it wasn't really about the 2 words, my pleasure. It was about the spirit that it really is our pleasure to serve you. And so we didn't train to the words, my pleasure. We trained to the spirit behind it. And it feels genuine and authentic at Chick-fil-A. But, you know, I've seen so many of our competitors, you pull through the drive, my pleasure, my pleasure. You know, it's not the 2 words that are magic. It's the real genuine spirit of hospitality behind that. And that's really what we train to. And it just comes out as the 2 words, my pleasure. But it emanates from people who really feel like it's their pleasure to serve you.
Do we have any questions online? It looks like we do. Well, I'll come back to you, Peter. Go ahead, Michael. What's the question? What's that?
Yeah. Michael, can I ask the question? Yeah. So David.
Yes.
What you just said about customer service is really, I think, the key to Chick-fil-A. You know, I walk into Walgreens and they say to everyone that walks in, welcome to Walgreens. They don't care that I'm walking through that door. They just have to say it. So when you think of the people on the side of the counter that are serving, to maintain customer service as well as they do at Chick-fil-A, it reminds me of a letter that you wrote about customer service where same words, but read forward, it means something, that when read backwards, it means something. You presented that to the Buckhead Business Association years ago, and I've never forgotten that. Mm. Is there any chance that, have you published that?
I have not. And the only reason I have it, usually any of the videos I use, it's actually a letter I wrote to the team that I work with, and we made a video out of it. Any other video I use, I usually allow anyone who wants to use it. That one I don't, because the impact of it would be ruined if people had seen it before in outside the context that you were able to see it in. So I haven't published it, and I probably won't publish it because it would weaken the impact of it when I use it.
Yeah, but I'll just say it was genius.
Well, thank you.
Peter, you have a question? Yeah, use the microphone and look in that camera over there.
Okay, David, you talked about the reputation that Chick-fil-A has built. So a marketing question for you. Do you believe that marketing is more about getting the message that you have on your mind out to others, or creating what's moving minds toward what you market instead of delivering what you have on your mind to the market?
I'm going to answer that question just a little differently than you asked it, if you don't mind. I think what the greatest brands understand that the others don't is that every great brand is ultimately an incredible story that people want to be part of. And every brand that I know of has this incredible story. And Truett used to say, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. He was inspired by a Bible verse. It's Proverbs 22:1. And so he always focused on his good name, but he never focused on great riches, because he felt like the great riches were the fruit, not the object of what we were doing. And I think great marketers understand the same thing. Great marketers are not focused on the riches. I think that's what the average marketer does. That's what the mediocre marketer does. But the great marketers focus on the great name, and the great names are associated with these amazing stories. We have a video that I also use, and this is generally available, called Every Life is a Story. And it's a very powerful video that we use for training. And it's part of the way that we get these people who feel like it genuinely is their pleasure to serve you, because we feel like the purpose of our business is to improve the story for those we do business with. There's a little expression that I love to share. It's how we view things drives how we do things. We talked about that earlier. Well, if we view what we're doing as an opportunity to steal grandma's last 30 cents, and it's all about the money, that's what we'll focus on. But if we view what we're doing as improving the story for those we do business with, that's what we'll focus on. And our marketing will emanate from that. So I feel like the greatest marketers create the greatest stories, and then all of their marketing is about creating value, not extracting value. And it's about improving the story for their customers, not extracting value from their customers. And that's kind of the nuclear idea of the whole thing. Does that help? By the way, just one other thing. It's interesting to me. I spent 35 of my 37 years at Chick-fil-A were in marketing, but 2 years I moved to operations. But basically, people around Chick-fil-A would say it's the marketing guy. But interestingly, since I retired from Chick-fil-A a little over 2 years ago now, almost every call I get from Chick-fil-A now is not about marketing. You know what it's about? Culture. They want me to help with the culture. I go back all the time to help with the culture. And I was like scratching my head saying, why is that? I wasn't in HR. I wasn't the chief people officer, but they think, and here's what I've kind of realized after the fact. Great stories in marketing are produced by great culture. You'll never see a great marketing and a great brand born out of a poor culture. And that really cultures are a story as well. But the culture is the story that employees want to be part of. And marketing is the story that customers want to be part of. And it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It's two different sides. There's a portal that the employees see, and there's a portal that the customers see, but they both want to be part of what's going on. But here's the thing. The customers will never be more excited about the story than the employees are. So if you want to get the customer passion up, start by getting the employee passion up.
Does the culture create the reputation, or the reputation create the culture?
I think it's the chicken and the egg, isn't it? But I think the culture does help create the reputation. It has to fulfill the reputation. But you've got to populate your culture with people capable of fulfilling that reputation.
Yeah, I think people make a mistake by trying to create a reputation or a culture by pushing.
Yes.
Back to marketing, pushing here's what we got, as opposed to having a long-term vision of the reputation that you've built over time, and having that patience create a presence in the market as opposed to pushing up.
Yes, very much so. And it's a long-term strategy for a long-term win. And there are short-term sacrifices involved with getting to that long-term win. But we have to live in the short term, but we also got to live in the long term. I'd rather live in the long term with the benefits. Yeah. You
So
bet.
for those of you who saw the flickering a moment ago, I was sitting on the remote. Sorry, Rich. Oh, what's going on with all that? So we wanted to wrap up with you addressing the comment about beating your competition.
Yeah. Brian and I were having a little conversation. I think one of the biggest mistakes we all make is trying to be competitive. Now, I can't tell how many meetings that, well, we got to be competitive. And basically, a way to think about it is this: 80% of what we do is exactly the same as what our competitors do. Like for Chick-fil-A, we buy land, we build buildings, we have drive-throughs, we have clean restrooms, we serve food over a counter, we have cash registers. 80% of what we do is exactly the same as our competitors. But 20% of what we do, dramatically different. The 80% makes you competitive. You got to do that well to compete. But the 20% is what gives you a competitive advantage. And my job at Chick-fil-A was to create a competitive advantage for Chick-fil-A, not make us competitive. If all we do is make ourselves competitive, we're a $700,000 business. But if we have a competitive advantage, we might be a $7 million business in a $700,000 category. But I felt like my job is to focus on creating competitive advantages for Chick-fil-A, and those were never found by making us competitive. I'm not saying we didn't have to be competitive. There are certain things we got to do to be competitive, but that's the 80%. My job was to come up with new and better 20% to give us that competitive advantage, to make the 80% unnecessary. It's almost like that's the building block to get to the rest. So the typical mistake I see people make is they look at what their competitors are doing and they say, that's what we have to do. All the stuff your competitors doing that you have to do, you do have to do, but that will make you competitive. Your job as a leader, your job as business people, in my opinion, would be to create competitive advantages for your organization, not make yourself competitive. Does that make sense?
Wow. Let's have a round of applause for David. Thank you so much, David. That was awesome. I would announce So one thing David wanted me to announce to the group is he's written 5 courses, right?
Well, it's actually 12.
12.
Yep.
Okay, I counted 5.
It's online. Yeah.
But there's online courses. It's all part of a program called Spark, Ignite Your Brand Revolution. If you would like more information on this, take out your pens and paper. Is that you just text Spark to 55444, and you'll gain information on the courses that he has written to make available to you. And that's in the text block for the people on Zoom.
Yeah, and also get a free sample of the course, 20-minute video.
There you go. 55444. Yeah. To text it to Spark.
Yeah, it's 6 online classes about marketing called Branding Marketing 101 and 6 about culture. So that's the focus is marketing and culture.
And I have some brochures on them as well if you'd like to pick one up. So again, thank you so much. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Yeah.
My pleasure.